Welcome to Discover Health, a White Mountain perspective. I'm your host, Dr. Tom Barela. It's now April 2020, and we are in the midst of COVID isolation up here on the mountain. This isolation is, of course, new for all of us, and there are a lot of other aspects of our daily lives that are affected by this isolation. And to discuss this, we are pleased to re-invite Joan Courtney of Unstuck Living to discuss some of the mental aspects of this. And we do so because she recently wrote an article, actually this week, in the White Mountain Independent about the anxiety that is associated with coronavirus isolation, and actually the whole milieu of things that are involved with the current isolation. And I'm going to say welcome, Joan, again, since we talked a couple years ago.
Thank you so much, Tom, for having me.
Well, I read your article in the White Mountain Independent, and this, of course, prompted my need to invite you to talk again because it seemed so salient. There are many aspects of COVID virus that don't have anything to do with the actual infection itself. And you wrote about them.
I did write about them, and one of my concerns, Tom, is we had a situation where the world was going along, clicking as it usually did. Kids are going to school, people are going to work, they're visiting grandma, whatever that might be. They're playing in playgrounds, doing their gardens, and all of a sudden it's as if the world was like this and it got tilted, and down here we are. We don't know what to expect, when this is going to end, and where to go from here. We're literally reinventing our lives. And you and I were discussing earlier the fact that we haven't really seen anything like this in our lifetimes.
No.
And I hope we don't see it again. Believe me.
I think we all do. And you know, with this isolation and stuff, I think the mental aspects of it are actually incredibly important. So let's start our conversation and talk about some of the emotions that are involved with the changes. I mean, our life changed abruptly. So in your article, you wrote about four emotions, and I'll bring them up and you can discuss them so you don't have to remember them. And the first one that you wrote about was fear.
And fear is directly connected with anxiety. When people are fearful, they're not only fearful at the present time, but they look into the future. And if they don't know what's going on, if the future is uncertain, they don't know where to go, what to do. They cannot make plans. That's a real challenge for the mind, because the mind goes, oh, we don't have a way to go. We had a usual pattern that we followed. Everything was going along. We might have some bumps. But what's interesting to me, the clients that I see now, actually I'm seeing them online, but the clients that I'm working with now still have those same problems. The unruly teenager. Maybe a mom has gone into a hospital. I just had a client call me the other day from Oregon saying, Mom just got in the hospital. I can't go in to see her. I cannot connect with her because she's deaf. I want to be there for my mom. My mom is failing, and I know she's going to pass soon. I can't be there. So extreme distress within that woman.
You know, and it's interesting, you mentioned that because the fear on the other side of the mom in the home and the child, the fear that the child can't do anything to help the mom, and the mom is probably older and in our age group, which is at a higher risk. I know we don't consider ourselves old, but according to statistics, at least we're older than a lot, and that's a good thing, by the way.
That is a good thing, but you can keep the old part.
Yeah, okay. The old part. So the fear on both sides of the glass.
Yes, very much so.
I mean, we don't talk much about how the older people are responding to recognizing that they're the highest risk population.
Indeed. And I think the other thing that brings this fear really into play is the idea that this particular critter, you can't see it, You don't know when it's going to attack you or where from. And you don't know how long this is going to last. I was mentioning the other day that I was watching a video from a doctor who's up in Michigan describing how you can pick up your groceries, and who knows what you picked up at the grocery store. He said, all right, you bring it home, and then this is what you do. You leave it right outside on your doorstep. I'm thinking, probably not. But then he had this whole protocol to follow. We have a clean side. We have an unclean side. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to keep you safe. I thought that's a very good thing to do. Then I have another friend who has a plumber living in her home, and he was describing to her, he goes, oh, no, we're going to take off your shoes when you come inside. You're going to strip down, have another set of clothes. Right when you come in the back door, we're going to wash your clothes, sterilize your shoes. So we're looking at all sorts of different, and then there are people that go, I really don't know if this is reality. I think somewhere in the middle is actually real. But I have talked with friends of mine who are back in New York City, and they're on day 23 of a lockdown.
Yeah.
Tom, that really, really takes a toll on a person. Was noticing one post from a woman saying, I got some sun today. And she was showing a little patch of sun that was in the middle of a patio. And there she was, just enjoying that sun for about 15, 20 minutes till the sun passed. I can't imagine living that way.
Well, you may not, and you know, if you read about how long China and South Korea were in lockdown, we have it. That was 2.5 months.
It's a long
And at the time we're dictating this, we're probably 3 weeks into it, maybe 4, and we got a ways to go.
We do have a ways to go, but there are different strategies that you can use to move into being able to entertain yourself and being kind to yourself, having some compassion for yourself. You need to be your own best friend, because there are some days, I don't know about you, but in this time, I had no energy. I thought, okay, I need to get going, and it was more and more frustrating. I was reading in a book by the way, I'm going to recommend this book for others. It's Just One Thing by Dr. Rick Hansen. And the story he told was of a fellow, he says, you're going down a river in a canoe. You and your friend are having a picnic. All of a sudden, the canoe tips over. Come out wet, sputtering mad. How do you feel? Because you're looking over the canoe and there's a friend who tipped it over to play a joke on you. Same scenario. You are in a canoe, traveling down the river, having a picnic with a friend. All of a sudden, there's a big bump on the canoe. The canoe tips over. You come up sputtering mad, looking around, seeing what it is, and a big old log has come from upstream down and tipped over the canoe. How do you feel?
Right, and the log is coronavirus?
The log could be coronavirus.
Right.
And the interesting part about that is that it's not really personal. Coronavirus just is. So what comes into us is not really personal. It's easy to think, well, that person cut me off. Or I'm at the pickup line at Walmart and somebody's just standing there or just getting in my way. They better move. And maybe just cutting a few people some slack is going to make your day a little bit easier.
Okay, well, there is a lot of fear associated with this, but the second thing you wrote about was panic.
Panic, exactly. I was laughing the other day. It was at Safeway, and one of the checkers was standing outside the door making sure everybody was getting in an orderly fashion. And she whispered to me, there's toilet paper. There's toilet paper. They just put it out 5 minutes ago. Well, I went over to that section, and there were 3 packs left. They had them 3 deep and all the aisle wide. They were gone. They were picked clean. I thought, this is panic buying. I think when we do things like that, Tom, we're assuring ourselves, okay, we're preparing for the future. I found myself, when this very first started, and we were told to stay at home, I couldn't get enough mustard. I probably have 7 jars of mustard. Not sure what I'm going to do with them.
I have no idea either, Joan.
But I sat down, I talked with my little dog, Macduff, and he goes, I don't think you need any more of that, Mom. I can't eat it, and I'm not sure you're going to get all through that. So, but it was a way of reassuring myself, because you can do a lot of things with mustard.
So think about the last time we panicked in this country. 1973. Remember the gas crisis in 1973?
Exactly.
I mean, that is the last time I remember. And panic, I think, is part of fear, is it not?
Panic is part of fear, but the other interesting part about both of them is that we have a physiological response. The vagus nerve, longest nerve in your body, about 17 inches, runs from the middle of your head down through your jaws, your carotid arteries, touches each and every organ in your body, winds up in your gut. Now, when a stimulus comes in, you will respond in a fight, flight, or freeze mode. When that happens, all of the blood rushes from your extremities into your trunk, because that's the way we saved ourselves when we were running from saber-toothed tigers. But the problem comes when it rushes from our head to that area. The frontal lobe shuts off. We can't think clearly. I don't know about you, but I've been writing checks and doing different things. I've been buying mustard till there was no tomorrow. And I was finally caught up with myself, and I said, I need to stop and think. I need to just sit still for a moment, take a few deep breaths, and that helps to reset that particular
panic type of mind. And we're going to talk a little bit about that when you talk later on about how to approach this. I want to go about the third thing that you talked about in your article, which was uncertainty.
Uncertainty, and we don't know how long this is going to last, what impact it's going to have on us. I feel very deeply for the women who are at home with their children, because I don't know about you, I'm not really a born teacher for children. And they're finding that they are passed into that role, and they're having to work through that. That takes tremendous.
Well, I think the uncertainty is even broader than that. As we talked before we came on the air, I mean, really, the advice to us and how to handle COVID virus has changed through the last couple months. I mean, we started with the thought process that you had to wear masks all the time. Then we went to no, only the people who were sick needed to wear masks to prevent from spreading it, that they really didn't prevent you, from catching it if you wore a mask. And then they went back to having N95 masks. And now we're at a position, at least today, no telling what tomorrow they're going to, where you can make your own home masks, and that's okay. Well, that's all uncertainty.
It is all uncertainty, and if you look online for masks, they are nowhere to be found.
Well, that of course is an issue. But as a pediatrician, I'm always reminded that children thrive on constancy in their environment, knowing what to expect. And that was the reason why young children have such difficulties on vacations, is because their routine is upset. They're uncertain about what's to come. And I guess we as adults need some certainty and some planning in our lives. And I know you have some advice on that when we talk later on, because I read the article in the newspaper.
I see. Thank you. I'm glad you did.
Okay, and then we're going to talk about something that is you talked about something that is entirely new for everybody, and that is isolation.
Isolation is something that is very new for us. If we take a look at Maslow's hierarchy of need, we're looking at, are you safe at first? Are you okay? Do you have a roof over your head? Let me sure I get this right, the physical parts. Do you have a roof over your head? Do you have food? And this is where we were in the very beginning. And then safety. Are you safe?
And that's really a problem right now, because if you don't have a job, you don't have money, where do you get your food?
Exactly.
Where do you pay your rent?
Exactly right.
Uncertainty.
Then you move to safety. And then you move to connection. And connection is where we're stuck right now. We're in a day and age where we have social media, which is fabulous. I think back to 1918, they had no social media, had no connection with each other. Of course, they didn't understand a virus the way we do today.
That's true. 1896.
That's exactly
first recognition.
Right. Exactly right. So we're looking at, okay, we can reach out and touch someone. We can communicate with them. and be able to explore different ideas, say, how are you doing? I'm having this problem with this. What's going on for you? You might laugh about things, because laughter is a great antidote for much of this. I don't know, but I've been laughing a lot recently.
I certainly haven't.
Well, no, probably not. But I plan that through my day. I plan that through my day. When I make phone calls to friends, I make sure that I have a joke or something that's funny that happened. My dog is very, very funny. And I make sure that we have something that's funny to talk about.
But isolation is not something that we deal with normally. And I would draw the inference to the movie Castaway, because when Tom Hanks was on that island, and I've been to that island, and there is absolutely nothing on that island. You look around that island and you look out and all you see is water. There are ants on that island. Nevertheless, Tom Hanks felt the need to talk to someone, and it turned out to be a volleyball.
A volleyball, exactly. And Joan Borisenko, who is involved in mind-body connections at the Harvard Medical School, also speaks to this and mentioned that particular Castaway, but mentioned the idea that perhaps this is the hero's journey. The hero starts out, regular life, everything's clicking along, and then a major upset happens.
Like coronavirus?
Like the coronavirus. Many different avenues to go through, many different challenges to overcome before he gets to the other side, but a changed person.
And this all leads to anxiety.
It all leads to anxiety, because as we can't plan in the future, anxiety ramps up. And because our mind is endlessly fascinating to me, it has so many different interests and so many different ways of imagining things, experiencing things. Anything that we can imagine, we can actually bring into our physical bodies and react in that way. It heightens things. We don't sleep if we're anxious. Okay. I've had a lot of people saying, I can't sleep at night. The suggestion would be, if you can't sleep at night, please get up after, say, about 10, 15 minutes. Go read a book. Don't get on social media, because that blue screen will, again, wake you up, wake your mind up, and you'll get back into bed and not be able to sleep even more.
In your article, and we need to talk about what you can do. I mean, it's nice that everything is bad and we're having all these problems, but I know that you have thoughts for us in what we can do. And you talked about a concept as leading into what we can do. And this concept said that your life must be centered and focused. What does that mean,
Centered
Joan?
and focused means that we as human beings like to have a reason for getting up in the morning.
Oh.
It might be a baby, it might be a little dog, it might be something that you are particularly involved with, but a reason for getting up in the morning. The Japanese call it ikigai. And it's something where it keeps you moving, keeps you focused. One of the ways to do that is to create a schedule. And I myself have a whiteboard, and it changes every day. I go, okay, this is what I do. At 5 o'clock in the morning, the Duff and I are up. By about 5:10, we're out the door on the walk, because I like to walk 10,000 steps a day. Then we go into, okay, today we're going to call so-and-so. Today I need to write these articles, or I need to develop this program, or I need to think about where I'm going to go. And then we have lunch, we have dinner, and then there's break time. I actually did some research on people that worked at home, because I thought, I'm not familiar with this, but they are. And there was one woman that had worked from home for 22 years. She said the most important part of this whole thing is the schedule, but also even more important is to make sure that you contact other people. You not isolate yourself. We are in a position where we're not able to contact others except through social media. It's not the same as giving somebody else a hug.
Because you can't do that now.
No, you can't. I was talking
You can't even elbow anybody anymore.
No, you can't. Not 6 feet away.
That's exactly the point. Not 6 feet away.
I had caught up with a neighbor of mine whose husband is going through medical challenges. And after talking for 10 or 20 minutes, 6 feet apart, she looked at me and she goes, I really want to give you a hug. I said, air hugs. We can air hug.
Air hugs.
You know, I don't know what else to do at that point. Yes.
Well, I think it's important that people develop a new schedule. I know that is, one of the attributes of highly successful people. And the problem is you just need to make a new schedule. And unfortunately for a lot of moms, it's homeschooling and actually babysitting in deference maybe to their jobs. So let's talk about suggestions that you have, because I know being centered and stuff like that. You went through a whole bunch of things in your article in the paper about what you can actually do, and a lot of it is just not sitting around.
Not sitting around is exactly right. I like the idea of people moving, getting out and moving in different ways. If it's walking, if it's jogging, if you go and bang a tennis ball against a wall, whatever it might be, but movement also changes your physiology. Once you change your physiology, you change your state of mind. If you are depressed, I find quite often, there are times I've even walked with my clients. They've been depressed or they've been anxious. We walk all the way through the neighborhood behind my office, and I have them look at the tops of trees. The minute you start to look at the tops of a tree, you find that you're visualizing something different, because the mind automatically, the eyes, when they go up here, they're looking in a visual mode, visual remembered or visual constructed. And you can actually recreate your world that way. It works very well. Also helps to get more oxygen in the body. You cannot be anxious and be walking at the same time.
I think the concept I want to get out of this is you got to do more than mope around.
Got to do more than mope around. And if you are worrying or problem solving, I'd suggest setting aside a time, maybe 10, 15 minutes a day, or half an hour if you've got more problems, and just worry the Sam Hill out of it, and then let it go. And after that, picture and imagine in your mind, I'm going to put that problem in a box, put a nice tight lid on the box, and put the lid on the shelf in that closet that's in my mind way, way back in the back.
You know, that's an interesting segue into one of the concepts you had, is if you feel helpless, do something helpful.
Do something helpful.
I mean, that's certainly happening around the world as we see people trying to help, even with social distancing, to try to help people in all walks of life, whether it's singing on your verandas in Italy or having a concert in a cul-de-sac. I mean,
exactly.
Do something helpful.
Exactly right. It was interesting last night. I was watching a little bit of the news, and they had a chorus of people from all over the world who were singing, and again, the conductor. They could see the conductor, but they were all singing together in harmony. Music was beautiful. Things like that. I was out for my walk this morning, and a neighbor ran after me and said, "Do you want some apples?" I got apples. So we're looking at that connection and being able to help others. Was also talking with Sunshine Tippett at Solterra. She said that all of her people are on lockdown in that facility. They're in that little room. The only people they see are the people that are working with them, unless they're fortunate enough to have someone, say a friend or a neighbor, come in and actually visit through a window. But I was thinking of letters. We could write letters to those people and say, "I'm thinking of you, wishing you the best," and sign your name. That would be a contact that they would have.
To get them out of the feeling of isolation.
Exactly.
Must be yucky being in a single room. I mean, most of us are in a house or an apartment or stuff. They're in a single room.
They are in a single room.
What an interesting way to give them more interaction. I want to go through one thing in your article. It talks about time to stretch your mind in different ways. I mean, you can actually use this as an opportunity.
You can actually use this as an opportunity, and I would caution you again, be gentle, be compassionate with yourself. If it's a day that you just don't have it, don't beat yourself up, because that's even worse then. But if you've always wanted to pick up that guitar and start playing again, if you've always wanted to learn a new language, there's so many programs on board that you can do that with. If you've always wanted to, quite often people go, "I don't really remember what I like. I don't know about any hobbies." And I remind them, I said, what did you do as a child? What did you have fun with? I had one woman who I was working with online, and she said, I used to knit. My auntie taught me how to knit when I was 5 or 6. I think I'm going to do that. And she said, she showed me a picture of the scarf. Now, it wasn't the greatest, but I said, it's the first attempt. You're doing it. And it's the idea of getting out and moving, of doing something different.
I think that that's important. I mean, I actually took some online courses in learning the physics of meteorology, something I wanted to do. We're almost out of time, and I want you to finish with the most important factor, the concept that this too will pass.
This too will pass. Tom, our old world has been through so much, so much. I mean, you name it, we've been through it. And this too will pass. We know that we aren't sure when it will pass. And I think there was a minister on TV that was saying, it says in the Bible, it didn't say it came to stay, it said it came to pass. So we're looking at...
There's a lot of came to passes in Scripture.
Indeed. So we're looking at it came to pass. We're moving through this, and I think we'll be better for it, because what I'm hearing about is the connections. I heard of a 14-year-old girl who was in tears, and she said, I get to talk to my mom, get to talk to her, not on phone, just talk to my mom. And we laugh and we joke, and she tickles me and I tickle her. I get to talk to my mom. That touched my heart, because I remember at 14, I talked to a lot of people in my family and all through my community. But to have her say that, oh, profound.
Isn't that impressive? There are some positive things to come out of this. Financially, maybe not so much, but we're essentially out of time, Joan, and I'm going to thank you very much for coming. I thank you for the article in the newspaper, and I would encourage our viewers to read it in the White Mountain Independent. You can find it by just searching Joan Courtney's name. But I want to leave this with everybody reminded that the mental health can be approachable. Stay up, stay moving, stay positive. I think that's what we should get out of Joan, and I thank you very much for watching today. Be healthy, stay isolated. Bye.